Great. Hi, everybody. This is a panel on storyboarding. That is a major deal for anybody who wants to do filmmaking. These gentlemen put things down on the page sometimes prior to anything else that's going on with a movie, just to see whether the producers have enough money to do it. Sometimes the storyboard artists have to figure out how to do the whole presentation of a particular scene and figure out how it's going to be shot, where the camera's going to go, and all that kind of stuff. And then that has to be budgeted prior to anything getting shot for the movie, because some of the things that these gentlemen storyboard are too expensive. The action and so forth is too expensive to actually get on the screen. So today we have the brothers, think of them as A and B, Anson and Benton Jew, and Frank Forte. And they're all very different in what they do, and then we're going to have them introduce themselves and how they actually discovered storyboarding and how that became their passion. And Frank, let's start with you.
Yep, my name is Frank Forte. I'm a storyboard artist, and I've done a lot of comic books too. That's kind of where I came from. So I was always into drawing, figures and perspective and spaceships and guns. So the comic book background helped me with storyboarding. When I moved out to LA, I knew I wanted to do something in film and animation. I did some character design, some animation, background design, and then kind of when I found storyboarding as a job, I realized, this is fun. I could tell the story. It's almost like comic books, but it's cool because I could work directly with the director and the script and kind of figure out the shots, and it seemed like a funner job where it was kind of more one-on-one, where it's a lot of times it's you and the director, or you and the visual effects supervisor coming up with ideas, and it's less about you working with like 20 people. So I kind of like that better. I've worked on stuff like Bob's Burgers, Solar Opposites, but a lot of action stuff like The Nun 2, Truth or Dare, Big Door Prize, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. So I go back and forth from animation, TV, and film. So I have a lot of storyboards, and these guys have a lot of storyboards too, but the first thing I wanted to show is what is called an animatic. So an animatic is kind of like a storyboard that's edited together with sound effects. And so a lot of times the directors do this for timing. They just want to see how it plays out, how it will look with effects. And this particular one, this was for Insidious: The Last Key, and this was me and the director working together. This is before the movie was before he had the job. We put this together as kind of like a pitch. So it was kind of like a teaser for him to get the director job, and he did, which was good. So he's used me like a bunch of times for other stuff like Escape Room. We did one of these for Escape Room. And so this is kind of like, this is a storyboard. There's a lot of shadows and it's rendered out, but you can see kind of what an animatic does and how it helps you.
That's
So-
great. That's great.
Yeah, so there you go. That's an example of, what they call an animatic. Now, not all productions use that. They don't always have the time, but it is a way to just, pre-visualize the scene, look at the timing, see how things work, show it to a visual effects person and say, what's the budget? Can we do this? Do we have to rework it? So
That's
a lot
great.
of,
Actually, Frank, we can spend a little time with each one of you so that you can have
Yeah.
some time. So the next, I'd like to hear from whichever one wants to go first. It's interesting, animatics can be much more complicated or that's, than that as well too, because I'll do.
and animatics will use a lot more in animation. That's usually what animation is. It's storyboarding and then editing an animatic. It has to go overseas to be, animated. They can look at the timing. But for live action stuff, a lot of times we'll just do the drawing and the director will get on set and that's all they need. And it's like a conversation piece when they get on set. Like, this is what we want to shoot. There's a conversation between him and the DP and maybe they'll make changes. So it's not so set in stone. Whereas in animation, you're kind of locking in everything so that it can be animated pretty much exactly like you see it.
So this is a scene that was not used from the film Venom, which is based on the Marvel comic villain. So this takes place in outer space on Venom world where the Venom character is. And we see
How much of this was in the script and how much did you kind of rewrite?
this was all the script, but the way it looked, I more or less had to make it up. So they didn't have this set or anything built. They had some rough. But we just need to show that these characters are coming out of the ground and
Yeah, and sometimes they'll have the art director, the production designer will have a set laid out and we'll know exactly what it looks like and then we go from there to make it look like the set. And other times it's really early in the process, they have nothing. So they're just it's out in outer space on a planet and there's a robot bug, go for it. And then we just start drawing,
Sometimes they actually budget before anybody else they actually are on it before anybody else has been hired.
a lot of times we're doing movies, we're just doing pitch movies. Nobody's done anything, and we're trying to pitch the whole idea of the movie, and a lot of and then proper storyboarding. Once movies greenlight.
Yeah, sometimes there's no script, there's just a pitch or an idea and you come up with stuff from that too. So we're utilizing all aspects of the process.
Actually, I remember doing a feature once, working in visual effects on a feature that raised money by taking a one-sheet poster
Go to the next.
to Cannes
Yeah,
for the film festival and actually raising $1 million from 7 countries
Just a poster.
with just the poster.
Yeah.
And the poster was a meteor coming straight down to the earth. And the movie was Meteor. It was horrible. But it was a movie called Meteor, and it was done in 1980. So
Yeah. Most people, I think, who are into film are pretty familiar with what happened with Ridley Scott when he did Alien. Because up until that time, if you had a monster movie, usually it was some guy in a ridiculous rubber suit and just kind of creeping around in the shadows, and it would be shot cheaply. People didn't take a horror movie that seriously. But because of the storyboards he drew, he kind of planted the idea that a movie could be a little bit more like you're taking it up to the next level. You're not just doing a blobby monster or something on the table. In this case, the character's body itself kind of told the story, you would see like the way the organism works just by looking at the character, and the producers saw that and they realized this is not just a movie with a few jump scares. It could be something much more, and you got a much bigger budget because the storyboards presented. So it's really important to get people to see what a movie can possibly be, and sometimes that was a thing.
Yeah.
So this is a scene from the film Logan, where Professor X, who's the leader of the X-Men, is resting in a bed, and he confronts the I don't know how many times I actually did this sequence. I did this, pretty much this is the only scene I did in the whole film. But it was done, before they had a set, and then when they finally got a location, that changed everything. Like, oh, it's not gonna, you're gonna have some stairs up there, and then so I did a version with stairs in it, and then there's another version that was, so I must just do this version. This is the closest to the final bit. Once I've worked on this particular scene, there's like 6 versions of this scene with different kind of locations.
I see stuff like this, when you get to the set that day, it will make the entire shoot go so much faster. So the director's going to have to get there and just start describing the shots.
Right.
There's a visual layout of like, this is what the director wants, and everybody from the cinematographer to the lighting people to the sound people, they know.
We're all literally on the same page. I mean, could you imagine having to say, describe the same thing over and over and over again? This makes it so it gives him that elevator pitch to everybody on this, whoever it might be, people who are dressing sets, actors, visual effects people, whoever's watching or whoever's looking at it, they all know what is in the end expected.
Michael? Yes.
Well, I wanted to emphasize, having been a working art director in the film business for 37 years, I want to stress how important these giants of talent really are. Sometimes at the speed at which some of these productions are being made now, you'll get the script after you've shot the entire movie. The only thing that gets you through are these drawings, and that Bible, that visual Bible, like you just emphasized, is so incredibly important, because not everything is written out descriptively on a page. But a picture tells 1,000 words. So as an art director, I can show up there and meet with the set decorators, and we can pull out these sheets and go, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. This is going to be cool, And so these guys really set the precedent for not only the feeling and the tone of the film, but the actual structure of the film. I've seen directors take verbatim stuff that these guys have done and made it into a movie. And we're talking top-tier directors who should have money of their own, but they're using their stuff because they're better at visualization and editing sometimes than directors, and they count on these guys to really put the story together.
There's a great line from Dick Silbert, who was an art director, a production designer, art director for years. That's 2 Oscars, one of them for Dick Tracy, and like he said this in public, so I feel like I can say it too. It's like, he said, some directors have no trouble visualizing. Warren Beatty can't visualize when he's having the breakfast. And so that is particularly when you need to have somebody that actually, like these gentlemen up here, doing every frame of the movie. Christopher Nolan, on the other hand, does very well in his own visualization, and as you pointed out, Ridley Scott draws beautifully too.
I just want to make a quick comment about the importance of drawing. So I did a movie with Ridley.
Oh, did you? Which one?
It was one that most people don't have never seen called Match that comedy. It's quite good.
Yeah.
But we're sitting with Ridley at his office in West Hollywood, and the designer and I are, we're talking about how we're going to accomplish something. And Ridley does these things called Ridleygrams. He's a very good illustrator. So he's sitting at the table and he's drawing these little things on sheets of paper. And when he's not looking, and when he finally leaves the room, the designer goes, he stuffs them in his pocket. We're like, oh my God, these are treasures. Like, we're going to hold on to these Ridleygrams forever.
Yeah, it's on the internet. There's this whole book from, oh gosh, I just blanked on the name of the movie, but it's the one in 1982 that's set up for 2049. Blade Runner, he has an entire book of sketches on the internet.
And a lot of them also, Sherman Levy and Mentor Hooker, who are also really good storyboarders.
Oh, right, that's true.
Yeah.
And when you look at those storyboards for Blade Runner, because I've been on the Warner Brothers lot for the past 3 years now, and the tour goes by endless. And they talk about things that nobody's ever heard of. They're referencing things that nobody on the tours have ever heard of. So I purposely stopped Tran and say, just take a second here. Look at this street. Now, if you've ever been on New York Street, Universal is a weird mixture of architecture. It's look really hard, because you know what was filmed here? Blade Runner. This is Blade Runner. This is the street. And then all of a sudden you just see this. And I said, check out the storyboards for this street, because that, you put two and two together, you're like, oh my God, we went from this to the movie. Holy cow, this is amazing.
Because it's like, yeah, I mean, and as a storyboard, you try and bring as much of your own as you can. I mean, when I was working on this for the Phantom Menace with George, didn't really know too much about Hong Kong. He wanted it to be more like a Hong Kong movie, for movie action. But he just wasn't all that familiar, and I was. So I brought a lot of, just said, okay, blank open fight scene, and then I showed him some footage from Once Upon a Time in China, part 2 or something like that, and he said, oh, that's really good, let's do something with scaffolding or something like that. So, I just was so creative, sort of like, let's play with stuff here. Play with some boarding, some fight scenes with scaffolding and swords and stuff. Frozen.
So I think something I'd like to add here is there are 10,000 jobs within the film business. I came from a small town down near the Mexican border, from a pretty impoverished little town. And I go back and I talk to the kids in my high school and I say, things like drawing. You like drawing? There's a job for that in the film business. There's actually a lot of jobs for that in the film business. If you really like it, explore it. I had no connections to the film business, and I got in it as these guys did. And so I think people don't realize the importance of the talent of what you may be drawing comic books on your folder in class, but you can also be doing this. You can't have.
And that's absolutely true.
Okay, yeah, so what I have, Okay, I'm Anson Jew. I'm a storyboard artist. I started off as an animator in the games industry, and I've been storyboarding since about 2002. This is some storyboards I did for Wonder Woman. It's coming to you as in the form of an anime. That's really just, I do that for presentation purposes, but these were actually just standard storyboard pages on 8.5 by 11 for the purposes of the film. But I just thought it was more interesting to look at when I added some music and sound effects. So here's a scene from Wonder Woman that was actually cut from the final movie, but you can see elements of it that appear in this scene.
I have a question for you, for all three of you, and that is, because I'm looking at your frame sizes. Do you draw for different frame ratios?
Yeah.
Specifically, so do you have anybody that tells you?
You have the director. Yeah.
Aspect ratios, yes.
It's a good idea.
Do you guys understand what an aspect ratio is?
Yeah.
Right.
4x3.
It's, well, 4x3 hardly anymore.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's.
Yes.
I don't know, we shot.
16:9 is pretty much standard these days. But, yeah, so, because I'm looking at your different frame ratios, so how would you illustrate for IMAX?
Great America, King Kong, this is basically where all most of the stuff is on the bottom. You don't really see that, you don't put a lot of things there, but, it's yeah. I mean, it really, basically.
I mean, as you're drawing, the formats now are all over the place. Christopher Nolan really went 2:1.
Yeah.
Obviously, as an illustrator, you're really thinking about, like what you just said, what's important. Because 2:1, you've got a very squishy frame.
Right.
You really got to put the important stuff up front, because you aren't seeing. I mean, aspect ratio actually started out, they went to thinner formats because it was too cost prohibitive to do the floor and the ceiling on sets.
Right.
So that's why they went to a squishy, thin frame. Now we use it for impact, but I've got to think as illustrators, you really think consciously for every frame of how you approach two people in a scene or three people in a scene.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, usually the wider format, something that's more visualized, and
Well, when you're being hired by the producers, let's say, before.
Maybe not so much. It's usually a wider format, like just like a movie format. You don't have to be so exact. It's either, 235 or 1.
Yeah, my personal favorite, so, and if they don't have anything specific,
There you go.
It's all going to change anyway. I mean, that's one of the things I think people realize is storyboarding. You might just, over again. If things change, they might want to change that. So things are going to change all the
Well, isn't it true sometimes when you lay it out like that and they go, oh no, that's really not what I
time. Exactly. I mean, it's everything you do in storyboard is kind of like your preview button and kind of test phase. I've done working with where I've done like the exact same scene, only it's like, okay, you go this it's that kind of thing. I did another job where we're changing this character into a female. Can we go back over all those boards and change character from a male to a female? Things like that.
It's a good way to check out screen direction and continuity. You can see how everything's going to kind of work before you shoot it. And if you guys are filmmakers, but maybe you don't have the drawing ability, go find an art student or one of your friends that's taking art classes and bring them and be like, hey, you want to storyboard this? I'll make your storyboards into a movie. I'll give you credit. But it's good because film is so collaborative. It's good now to start thinking about, how are you going to work with a storyboard guy or a costume designer, or go meet someone in the theater department. Maybe they could build a set for you or something. Or if you think you want to do it yourself, just take a drawing class, take a figure drawing class or gesture. I mean, believe it, you might look at that and go, I could never draw that. Anyone could really learn how to draw, especially in a basic sense. To do stick figures would make it a little bit better. Know how to draw faces and anatomy and basic shapes. Just take a couple of drawing classes and you'll figure it out. You'll get to a basic point where you could at least do a thumbnail. They call it a thumbnail version of what you want, and then you could always hand that to an artist.
And actually, it can be done primitively, because sometimes when you're working on film films and so forth, you don't have the money for that. You don't have the personnel for that. You can do them quite primitively, but then the entire crew understands what you're going after, and it'd be very simple. It'd be very simple.
Yeah, usually there's like, especially if I look in TV, usually I do a rough phase, like a stick figure phase, just to make sure that I am on the exact same page as the whole. But at the early stages, there'll be tiny little thumbnails that will be 32 times on page, and they'll be done in a stick figure phase where me and only the director. Get the main ideas out and integrate real.
Does anyone have a question at this point at all? Yes.
I guess I was kind of curious about your art person as
So
well.
tell your history.
I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, I was like,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah.
my main thing was to be a comic book artist. So I learned my storytelling from that. But as I grew older, I learned to really, they always said in the comics, you should look at movies to really understand it. You realize, this angle is there for our purposes, right? Learning the film language not only informs what you do. You're both understanding. I'm a film nerd. Oh, you remember that scene? That was in that movie by so and so, and you understand it. You can geek out and understand it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool storyboard artists and books out there that you guys should check out. Like I was telling everybody about Lightbox Expo, which is I think next weekend. It's coming up in Pasadena. It's not just animation, there's a lot of live action people there too, and a lot of people that are selling books on the art of film, storyboards, character design. So you can get a lot of cool how-to books there.
I take that opportunity to tell you that I am the author of one such book. Professional Storyboarding Rules of Thumb, which you can get on Amazon, and it's published by Focal Press. But you want to learn about storyboarding, that's one good book.
I have a question for you guys that if you work in animation.
Yes.
Have you ever done storyboarding in animation? Because I remember going to a storyboard session on the Rescuers, because Willie Brown. And watching them move frames around. So, have you done some?
I worked on a few animated shows. I worked and features. I worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first animated feature version of that, and also did a lot of TV stuff. Scooby-Doo, Wolverine, and the X-Men. And it is a very similar art form to doing live action voice, but it is different in that animation storyboards are really more emphasis. The emphasis is more on the acting. When you're working in live action, you're really trying to find a good shot. And if you get the idea across of what the actors are doing, one or two drawings will do it. And once you get on the set, that's actors do it. Since we don't have actors in the truest sense in animation, you're kind of like standing in for the actors. So you gotta get your character to emote and really tear up the chips and furniture on the scene. So you see a lot of acting in animated.
Well, with the countless amount of apps now available, even for your phone, that are supposedly going to help facilitate the storyboarding process, I've got to think as artists like yourself, you're still going to prefer the pencil in your hand. There's a thought process, a certain, I'd hate to call it slowing down, but there's a more thorough process where you actually have to put that through your arm, through your hand. Would you agree that just sticking to some old, the way it was done, the way it will continue to be, is perhaps the best way for it to go?
I like having pen to paper. Most of what I think most storyboarders now generally work on the computer. And I have a Cintiq that I work on. Whatever gets you close to the drawing, we think you can get that. So for me, I like to have it.
Well, then there is the question that's been going through every panel this EagleCon, and that is, how do you
FAI.
I don't, AI can do a lot of things, but really, you're drawing from experience that only humans can have. I think if you're a so-called creative who thinks that they can get something out of basically kind of a copy machine, basically, you're not, it's not even flexible enough. It doesn't really understand. You're just sticking something in there, and you're kind of rolling the dice and hoping that it will come out the way you want. It's not really a creative part of the creative process. The process is what makes, creative, not just some prompt that your cat can do. In terms of storyboards, AI, they can give you the what. They can put some characters on a stage, and it'll look like a really good drawing or a painting or something like that. But it really takes human experience to know which shots to use. And when I say which shots to use, I'm talking about the why. Why are we looking at this in a close-up? Why? You don't choose the close-up because it's prettier. You choose the close-up because it tells you certain. You get a certain emotional weight when you get a close-up versus a long shot in most cases. But knowing those rules comes completely from human experience. It doesn't come from mishmashing of pretty images. You can't get.
Because there's something like 9 or 10 different camera positions, and you get basic ones like wide shot, long shot, close up,
Right.
and
Those
then
are the basic ones
up
that you have.
shot,
You can
down
also
shot.
have the shot you give the character in the very foreground is all completely in shadow. He's almost completely in shadow, except he's slightly lit by a reflection. Very fair, tiny bit of a smile. Those are things that have to be thought of by a person who's experienced.
Well, I think, again, using the talent that you all possess, you can go on for weeks talking about AI and whether it's good or bad. I think any one of us, and most people, you could spot a mid-journey drawing from 100 yards away. It's all the same kind of feel. But if that's going to succeed or benefit any of us as creatives, it's going to be what we're bringing to the table from our experience. And when I look at all the plethora of AI art being created right now, anybody can type in Angelina Jolie in a bikini in the desert with a machine gun, and you're going to get exactly that, and it's not that interesting. But you look at the David Finchers and Mark Romanek and some of these directors out there, Tarsem Singh, you look at these guys, you're never going to beat them at the table with the reference you're going to bring, whether it be analog or digital anyway. They're going to be 10 books ahead of you, and they're going to have the information inside of their head. The AI stuff people like yourselves are going to make is going to be way better than anybody like my accountant sitting and fooling around with Midjourney, because it takes that human spirit. You come up with the right prompt to do something.
One example that I like to use is that when you watch a movie, what things are really moving you about the movie? What's the movie really about? So if you look at something like Star Wars, Midjourney can take a TIE fighter and stick it in the desert, right? That's one thing AI can do. But really, what's Star Wars about? Star Wars isn't about planets far away. Star Wars is about what's like in a dead-end town like Modesto. If you want to be a pilot or you want to be a driver or something, that's what
Star Wars is a Western.
It's about a small town boy. It's about George Lucas growing up in Modesto. That's what Star Wars is about. And reading a lot of these more recent movies. They just think, TIE fighter, and stick it next to, an H.E.T. Walker, and stick it next to, they're just mixing and matching things. They're not pulling out the emotions from something that is the result of direct experience and a range of emotions.
Because the originally the scripts came from Wagon Train. So it was a Western first, and Roddenberry bought the licensing to Wagon Train scripts and put it in space. And if you go back and look at some of the original stuff, you'll understand where that comes from. Because it comes from, from old-fashioned Westerns. And it's the same stories, it's just in a different place.
Yeah, there are some stories about like Alfred Hitchcock, like he used storyboard artists, but he would keep them hidden away in a room because he didn't want people to know that some of the ideas were coming from these guys that were drawing it. And he wanted people to think, oh no, this is all me. I think that came out, what was that? There's a documentary about...
The movie with his wife.
Hitchcock, yeah.
There's a documentary about a storyboard artist and his wife, and they were like a Hollywood team, and she worked in film, but they talk about it there. But that's a really interesting story about Hollywood in the 60s.
Right.
And how they
She was
did
in
it.
Harold and
Harold. She was one with an archive.
she was an
Yeah.
archivist. Yeah.
She was an archivist.
It's an interesting story about old Hollywood.
If you really want to know what we do, it's one of the few movies that really kind of like hit on what we do as artists. So
They kind of touch on it in Hitchcock too.
right, think about Hitchcock and
The
when they
movie, I
did
mean.
The Birds and Psycho and all those shows. How when he was doing Boys Gone, Graduate, and it's really it's really a good show.
How artists contribute to the visual language.
One of our fellow members, Gabe Hartman, he's also a comic book artist, but he's also a really good screenwriter.
And then what I was showing up there, this is some stuff I did from Lovecraft Country, and a lot of it was pretty much working with the visual effects supervisor because these creatures had to be, they were all CG, so they had to be put in with the live action people, and all these shots it was very calculated on how many visual effects shots they had in the budget. Now this was a huge, I think it was like 10 million in episodes. They had a huge budget. So there was no real problem with doing a lot of shots, but there was a limit. So what I solved in this was, how many shots do they need? How many shots could they have? And then how are they going to shoot it? And then, bizarrely, they shot this one way, and then somehow the director didn't understand visual effects as much. And this whole wood shot, they had to shoot it all over again. Because for some reason, he didn't shoot it right, and the visual effects people couldn't work with the shots. I don't know exactly what happened, but so it's a good thing, visual effects, a director needs to know. I think on that movie, on that show, when they were bringing people over from Game of Thrones that knew visual effects and dragons, those guys worked better with this ecosystem. But when they would bring in a director from like a crime show, he maybe didn't have the visual effects mindset, and they had to kind of school him in how visual effects works. If you're used to shooting, dialogue scenes and stuff, you might not know. So yeah, some directors are good at one thing, some directors are good at other things, but yeah, these boards were basically, and they didn't storyboard everything. We just storyboarded the shots that had visual effects, special effects, which are, practical gore scenes, and anything with like maybe some dead bodies or a monster or something like that.
I made a lot of money from directors and producers who didn't understand visual effects.
Just to fill in the gap,
Yeah.
Harold and Lillian, a Hollywood
Harold
love
and
story.
Lillian.
Harold and Lynn, a Hollywood love story. I would strongly recommend you see it.
2015.
That's Michelson, isn't
Harold Michaels.
Harold Michaels.
it? Yeah, I was gonna say. Yes, good.
mean, a lot of times, well, especially during COVID, you hardly get to see anybody, but usually you work, mostly with the director, and then there might, depending on what you're doing, you might interface more if you're doing a stunt-oriented thing. I've worked with a few stunt coordinators and stuff like that. Get in there and, little toy cars to show where the cars are going, or help them kind of plot out a fight scene. Or if it's more of a set-oriented thing, you talk to the production designer, and it's always good to go to the art department and either look at the sets as they're in progress, or they might have like a scale model that they're working on, so that you can look at the whole thing and see what the space is that you're working in. It gives you a much better idea. Little lens things to look at and see what the feel of the setting is going to be like. So yeah, you work with a lot. I work with a lot of visual effects supervisors, because visual effects supervisors usually things like, well, we don't want you to have, we want to avoid spending too much money on detail-y stuff, so we want to have it put your tongue too close or something like that. So that will inform that. So you're working as a storyboard artist across a lot of different departments.
And I think, again, as an art director, there's been a separation between LC that I've not liked, overall years. I mean, William Cameron Menzies was the first person to ever be titled production designer. And it used to be under the jurisdiction that storyboarders were under the art department. And now you deal almost directly with the director or visual effects, and we in the art department get it after it's all kind of formulated, which is a shame, because I think there's a dialogue now that's missing that all of us can contribute to, that I think they benefit the whole.
I think as a whole, in general, I think really COVID kind of like, even before COVID was happening, we've been doing a lot more shows, working from home remotely, and I kind of really dislike that model, because I think it's important to have some cross-pollination, understanding what's going on in the other parts of the production and sets and stuff like that, and you put on.
I think it's important the tactile function of a human hand. I like sitting in a room and the storyboard and the production designer and the director are coming up with ideas. I want to see the animation from storyboard going, and then he goes, because it's a collective medium, and I want to see what the storyboard artist is going to emote. I can't do that on a Zoom call.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, literally hard to do. I was working on this film called My Mother, and it's like the director always had a problem knowing her left or right. She admits that, but doing it over Zoom, normally I work with. But when you're doing it on a Zoom, you can't really go over her shoulder like that, so she can see what she's looking at. And then when you're trying to do it, explain it, it's left and right. That's always hard to explain, because you don't know whether you're talking camera right or her right or whatever. And so yeah, there's something about being there in person, tactily and so forth, to be able to
mind for me, because I know people like are on starting before the script's written, and they stay all the way through post-production. And it feels to me like they would be working with storyboard artists directly, because they're the big guns and have that time and have that ability. It's something that the younger people and the people that are who don't have established that sort of reputation need to cultivate. So,
yeah, I think there's a lot of separation between departments, and I think one of the things time reviewing their post-production and editing and filling gaps over there. But you have a sense of the whole production going on, as opposed to now you get, it's really piecemeal and you don't know what and you know the right thing to do. The context is really important. It's actually very sad because even before the COVID year, people seem to get really hung up about things like that. So you only get part of it. You get the entire thing. And it makes a huge, huge difference. One is because I like to see the entire script in front of me on paper so I can scribble notes on it and drawings on it. You know, context is everything when you're talking about storyboards. You got to know what's gone on before so that you know what to draw in. Really important.
They give you 2 hours.
I'll take that over some of the other stuff that we had. We had scripts where they give you a piece of the script, and you're not allowed to make any copies of it, and you can only look at it on the computer and run for 10 minutes, and then turn off. And then if you want to look at it again, you have to sign back in.
Man, when we literally had to sign back in, they had the script in a room, and then you had to basically check in with little desk in the front and say, okay, well, I need to look at the script for 10 minutes, and you go inside there, read your little thing, and then, oh, you're 15 minutes up, okay. And it wasn't, when this happened, it was like, not exactly a good script, it was worth all the secrecy, but, you know, I think things get a bit ridiculous.
Curious what you think the aspects are to make it a healthy partnership that keeps you coming back.
I think you just have to communicate really well. I think, you know, you talk about, a director's eye, or a storyboard artist's eyes or his hand, but really the best tool that he has is his ears. You know, you need to be able to, the director is talking, you understand the language. He's speaking to a certain language. Common ground. So, you find, if a director you just ask them, the director and producers and whatever, to give you as much upfront thing. Generally, they won't have anything. Won't have a whole lot that, if they say, do you have any, costume shots or good shots of the actors? Do you have set shots of the setting who's dressed up yet, or be. Yeah, get as much as you can up front. Try to get like a back view. And then working on it. Is it possible to slide time? Get it as soon as possible. We're going to get the deadline, and you got to at least, even if you don't follow. That's kind of like a lot of. That's kind of all disappearing. Storyboards. But well, I would say that actually because the CG animation really kind of be as much input in it, so they make you the storyboards. Because CG allows you to flip around and change the layout. I think I really work with it. My sense is that probably would be all layout and visual. That what I'm speaking of now is just one stage of because it's changed. You can change. All the assets are already there.
And animation too is a little bit different depending on where you are in the project. Like I worked on the Emoji Movie. I don't know if you guys thought of it. It won 4 Razzie Awards. 4. But I got on real early when there was no script. There was just a story. And there was like 4 or 5 of us, and one guy was from Pixar, and they were just like, we got to pitch something in like 6 months. Just come up with stuff. We're like, okay. So we just started coming up with ideas for characters and what they looked like, and they didn't even know what the world was like. They didn't know what the laws were for the world. So like that whole beginning sequence and that the emoji thing where they all go into that arena, we all came up with that. There was really no script. So early on in a feature film, sometimes like Pixar and Disney, it's story artists coming up with stuff, working really loosely, like even like stick figures, like super loose to just kind of, they do an animatic and like in 2 weeks they look at it. Oh, is it funny? 10 voices. Let's do it again. Let's make this joke, bunch this up, and everybody's pitching jokes and stuff. And then later on, as that develops, sometimes the script evolves simultaneously with the storyboard animatic. And then as it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, maybe you're more likely to follow what's on the script than just come up with stuff because they kind of nailed down the story. Sometimes in an animatic feature, sometimes there is a script where you're going from a script. Like I worked on Despicable Me 2, and we had a script, but they were just like, just go crazy. Here's the script, but just come up with crazy stuff. So follow the script, but then just come up with crazy ideas. And sometimes Illumination would give the same like 4 pages to like 3 different artists to see what everybody came up with, and then take the best of each and kind of put them all together. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a cool way, because each storyboard artist was allowed to go off and do their own thing. Now, when I worked on Bob's Burgers, totally different. That was a script-driven show. The writers were the bosses. They were funny. Do not come up with any jokes because the jokes are on the page. So we really couldn't write anything. We couldn't come up with jokes, come up with anything too wacky. They were like, nope. But they had a formula, and that was kind of like their show. Simpsons, Family Guy, Rick and Morty are kind of more like that. They're script-driven. So even in TV, like SpongeBob is more of a gag-driven show. Sometimes they come up with a story. Sometimes the storyboard guy can come up with a story. So even in animation, there's all sorts of different ways how shows kind of come together, which some give you more freedom and some don't.
Pixar is known for having a group room where anybody can participate. And the secretary can come
Yeah.
put in. So that is their byline, and that's the way they started out, and that's the way they continue. You have a question? Good.
Specifically for story artists and that kind of thing, what would you suggest what would you say that a beginner who just really want to get into this specific general career?
I think you need if you can get images, that was it's not about the drawing, it's about the action in the drawing. You get as many drawings out there in your draw a lot of talent. But otherwise, the main thing I would say is do a scene that can scare you, you can make you feel sad, whatever it is. Show that you can make the characters you can feel and show.
Too about animation.
I was going to say, it's like Frank, who can actually scare you and make you laugh at the same time.
Another thing about animation is it's kind of segmented into genres, I would say, like action adventure, right? Superheroes, DC, Marvel, all that stuff has a certain look, and people that can draw action heroes are good at that. SpongeBob and those other shows like Cartoon Network, they're very comedy oriented. So some guys that just do comedy, they stick with comedy. They won't do superheroes because they just don't like that genre. Guys that do superheroes sometimes would not storyboard SpongeBob. And then you have the other sitcom shows like Bob's Burgers, Simpsons, and Family Guy, and that's kind of a third style. So you could break it up into those three, and I would say focus on one of those to break in. Now, there are guys that do all of them. I kind of do sitcom and comedy, but I would say breaking in, focus on one, and then a fourth one would be kind of like preschool, if you're into that, because like preschool is a certain style. But I would say if you're going into animation, pick like, comedy or superheroes, those are the two main ones, and just focus on your portfolio being, similar to that, and then try to get it done.
If you're doing live action,
One more, you can do your
I
thing.
just to make sure that when you're doing your boards, show that you understand the film language. When you're looking at the camera from a high angle, you're looking down at something. What does that mean to you emotionally? Or from the opposite, from a low angle. When the camera's farther away or wider, the camera is with a shorter lens. all of those have an emotional impact. And, you know, how you set those up tells how much you know about filmmaking. And I think you'll get the leg up if you show that you understand the filmmaking. So make sure that your boards show that you understand film. So watch a lot of films. Why do they put the camera here or there? That's really important. That's what they're hiring you.
You can come take my class at USC. Anyway, thank you.
To stress the importance of storyboard, Michael Bay would never finish a film without a good storyboard artist, because you know how these scripts read? Boring talk, and then in parentheses it says, robots fight. And that lasts 20 minutes. You know who fills in the gap? You guys. That's how you know what to build. Because they've created a vision that we